So I'm Sandy Simmons, affectionately known as the fertility alchemist. You might wonder what that's about. It's not just about helping women to become pregnant or couples to birth their children, but it's also about the fertility of the whole planet. We have a lot of things what appear to be going against us at the moment. What are we leaving for our next generation and the generations to come? What's the legacy that we'll be leaving? There's a lot of talk about all the different things like climate change, but soil depletion is one of the things that isn't talked about enough. At present, there's about a third of the world's population, I'll rephrase that, a third of the world's farmland has been ripped off. It's no longer fertile. What's caused this to happen? It's the fertilisers over the years. It's many other contaminants that have been used to what appears to be erode bugs and things like that in the system of Mother Earth. But what's it done? It's just depleted her instead. The other part is the waterways. The waterways are also contaminated. What will we do about those? And the third thing that we need to actually sustain food is the seeds. The seeds of actually having things to plant in the soil and the water, the good water, to help them grow. I'll just go back on a couple of little stories I have. One day my son came home from work. He worked in a restaurant, a well-known one in the Yarra Valley in Melbourne, Australia. And he came home and said to me, "Mum, we've got oysters from Canada arrived today." And I said, "For goodness sake, why?" And he said, "Because apparently they're the best in the world." And I said, "What's wrong with our Aussie ones? We have great ones from Sydney and New South Wales." So that really started me to think, what are we actually doing? We're transporting food all around the world, and where it's needed is not a problem. But there's a lot of needless waste that goes on. There's a lot of needless transportation. We really need to think about just eating local, freshly produced food. There's nothing that sustains health more than that, but we've got so far away from it. Another little story that comes to mind is about 25 years ago, there was a young South African came over to Australia he was a teacher, and he was sent to our school to find out what it was like in the West and what he could bring back. So I spent the day with him, and over lunch I remember him saying, "You have everything here." And I said to him, "But you have everything there." And what the conversation was about ended up talking about malnutrition. Because malnutrition is just not for the third world countries. It's also about the West. We're becoming very malnourished. We've got obesity on the rampage. Our digestive systems just don't work anymore. So where do we go? We've got this on one hand and that on the other. It's a real dilemma. If only we didn't think so greedily and want everything and have everything at our fingertips in some countries, whereas in other countries they can hardly even get enough grains of rice to feed their family for the day. After all these years, it still seems ironic that nothing has changed. So what else can we do? We have lots of different ideas coming up around the world. There's a farmer in France that I know of who is saying he's not going to use fertilisers anymore on his farmland, and he says it's going to take somewhere between 1 and 3 years to resurrect it. It'll take a bit of work, but instead of using the fertilisers out of the bottle, he's going to go back to using animal feces and anything else that he could muster. He's going to ask all his friends to give them all his scraps of food. He's going to make compost, and he said, I don't have a huge farm, but this has to happen. There's another project underway actually in Australia where we all know about how there's too much CO2 in the atmosphere. There's actually, I think it's in Melbourne, don't quote me on that, but there's a few scientists come together to put together a way forward where we can actually utilise that CO2 in the soil so that it doesn't enter into the atmosphere as much. There's other ways that we can do things. We need to think about the water. We have water in all countries contaminated now for many different means. Then there's the seeds of what we use to farm. And we all know in many different countries they've now banned some of the hybrid seeds. Non-hybrid seeds are the original heirloom seeds, the ones that keep producing year after year. So what can we do as individuals to help Mother Earth on her way? We can make sure we don't use fertilisers at home. We can make sure that we at least try to plant a couple of tomato plants or some other plants that we would love to eat in our gardens. I've got friends who have just a balcony and they grow things there. And if you can find space for some fruit trees, that would be even better. Then we can start getting back to community and exchanging food locally. It's so very important for the interests of the planet and for our children and generations to come. Slowly, unfortunately, a lot of the old ways are getting lost. Not all the old ways are bad. We all know that the old and the new melded together will make a much better world. But there's a lot of negation on what's gone before and how it doesn't work. So I would like to just run by you now my idea of what I would love to bring out into the world. It's been in the back of my mind for over 30 years. I've been around the world and stayed in a few different communities, ones where they are trying to clean up their part of the environment. I'd like to see some truth farms appear. And what that means, what that means to me is the fact that we just have areas in the world that we can start to show as an example. We can clean up the soil, clean up the waterways, and clean up any of the areas in the environment so that women can come and birth their children in nature with the least interference possible, being in alignment with the same thing as Mother Earth, doing very little to change what already has sustained us for a long, long time. The truth farms will also give ground to people at the other end of life when they choose to remove their skins, and so therefore souls can come in and out of this world in peace and calm and in nature. I believe that's what was intended in the very beginning, and I can't see why we can't get back there. There's a lot of what I call apathy in the world today. A lot of people say, well, there's not much we can do anymore. But if we keep saying that, the balance will never change. So what I really implore all of you to do, if you can just do those two things, go home, throw away your fertilisers, plant a few things plants that can be eaten, exchange them with your friends. That's a great start. Thank you.